My name is Solara. I am 28 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my entire family turned against me over $1,850. What started as my daughter's birthday party ended with police at my door, and a family secret so devastating it changed everything I thought I knew about blood loyalty. The betrayal cut deeper than money ever could, and the revenge that followed was sweeter than any cake we never got to share. Sometimes karma needs a little push, and I became very good at pushing. Before I dive into this family drama that literally had me questioning everything I believed about loyalty and trust, I want to know where my amazing viewers are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, because I love seeing how far these stories travel. If you are ready for a wild ride of family betrayal, unexpected twists, and some seriously satisfying justice, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because you will not believe where this story goes. Trust me, you will want to stick around for the ending that nobody saw coming, especially my family. Let me paint you the picture of how this nightmare began. My daughter Melody just turned 7, and like any mom who loves her kid to pieces, I wanted to throw her the most magical birthday party she had ever experienced. We are talking princess theme, complete with a bounce house face painting and enough pink decorations to make Barbie jealous. I had been planning this party for months, saving every penny I could squeeze from my budget as a single mom working 2 jobs. The guest list was simple: my parents, my sister Dahlia, my brother Marcus with his wife and kids, and about 12 of Melody's school friends. Nothing fancy, just family and friends celebrating my little girl's special day. I sent out invitations 6 weeks early, called everyone personally to confirm, and even created a group chat to coordinate timing and details. Everyone seemed excited. My mom kept talking about how proud she was of me for pulling this together despite my tight finances. 3 days before the party, I made final head counts with the vendors. The bounce house rental was $350. The princess performer was $400, catering for 25 people was $600, decorations and party favors added another $300, and miscellaneous expenses, like the custom cake, brought the total to $1,850. Every single dollar represented hours of overtime shifts and skipped meals for myself. But seeing Melody's face light up when she talked about her princess party made every sacrifice worth it. The morning of the party arrived, and I was buzzing with nervous excitement. I had transformed our backyard into a pink paradise. The bounce house stood majestically in the corner. The tables were draped in shimmering pink fabric, and the custom princess cake sat like a crown jewel on the dessert table. Melody wore her favorite princess dress and had been practicing her curtsy all week for when her family arrived. 11:30 rolled around, and the party was scheduled to start at noon. I expected my family to show up early to help with final preparations like they always did for family events. Noon came and went. The school friends started arriving with their parents, and I kept checking my phone for messages from my family. Nothing. By 12:30, I was worried something terrible had happened. Had there been an accident? Was someone sick? I called my mom first, straight to voicemail. Dad's phone did the same thing. Dahlia's phone rang twice before going to voicemail, which meant she actively declined my call. Marcus was not answering either. I started texting frantically in our family group chat, asking if everyone was okay and where they were. The messages showed as delivered, but nobody responded. By 1 o'clock, Melody was asking where Grandma and Grandpa were. She kept looking toward the gate, expecting them to walk through at any moment with presents and hugs. I made excuses about traffic and promised they would be there soon, but inside, I was panicking. Something was seriously wrong, and I could not figure out what. The party continued without them. The other kids had a blast, and Melody seemed happy enough playing with her friends, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes every time she looked toward the gate. The princess performer did her show. The kids bounced until they were exhausted, and we sang Happy Birthday without the voices that mattered most to my daughter. Every photo I took felt incomplete because the family who should have been there were mysteriously absent. As the party wound down and the last guests left around 4 in the afternoon, I tried calling my family again. This time, Dahlia answered on the first ring, which told me she had been avoiding my calls all day on purpose. "Where were you?" I demanded, not even bothering with pleasantries. "Melody kept asking for you all day." "Oh, the party was today." Dahlia's voice dripped with fake surprise. "I totally forgot. Sorry, sis." The casual dismissal in her tone made my blood boil. This was not some random barbecue she had forgotten about. This was my daughter's 7th birthday party that we had been planning for months. "You forgot, Dahlia. We have been talking about this for weeks. You were in the group chat about timing and food preferences just 3 days ago." "Yeah, well, things came up. Maybe next time, do not plan such elaborate parties if you cannot handle people not showing up." The line went dead. She had hung up on me. That evening, after Melody was asleep clutching her new presents from her school friends, I sat in my kitchen staring at the leftover cake and unopened party favors meant for family members who never showed. The silence felt deafening. I had spent my daughter's college fund on a party that my own family had deliberately skipped, and I still had no idea why. I tried calling my parents one more time before bed. My father finally answered, but his tone was cold and distant. "Dad, what happened today? Why did nobody come to Melody's party?" "Solara, we talked about this. Your parties are always too expensive and over the top. We decided as a family that we are not going to enable this behavior anymore." "Enable what behavior?" "Celebrating my daughter's birthday. You spent almost $2,000 on a child's birthday party when you can barely pay your rent. That is not responsible parenting, and we are not going to pretend it is by showing up and acting like everything is fine." The words hit me like a physical blow. My own father was lecturing me about responsible parenting, while my daughter had spent her birthday wondering why her family did not love her enough to show up. "You could have told me this weeks ago instead of letting Melody get excited about seeing everyone." "We hoped you would come to your senses and scale it back. When you did not, we made our choice." After he hung up, I sat in my dark kitchen feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my life. But beneath the hurt and confusion, something else was growing. Anger. Pure, cold anger at the cruelty of letting a 7-year-old girl wait all day for family members who had collectively decided she was not worth their time. The next morning brought crystal clear perspective along with my coffee. I woke up with a strange sense of calm that surprised me. The hurt from yesterday had crystallized into something harder and more focused. My family had not just skipped a party. They had coordinated a deliberate campaign to humiliate me and break my daughter's heart. The group decision aspect made it exponentially worse. This was not a misunderstanding or poor communication. This was calculated cruelty. I spent the early hours while Melody slept reviewing every interaction from the past few weeks. The signs had been there, but I had been too focused on party planning to recognize them. My mother's comments about learning to live within your means had increased in frequency. Dahlia's responses in the group chat had become shorter and more non-committal. Marcus had stopped asking about party details altogether after initially seeming excited. They had been planning this boycott while letting me spend money I did not have and build up my daughter's expectations. The betrayal was methodical and complete. Around 8 in the morning, my phone started buzzing with text messages in our family group chat. I expected apologies or explanations, but what I found was something entirely different. Marcus had sent a message to the group. "Since we are all talking about money management, Dahlia and I were wondering if Solara could help us out with something." My sister followed up immediately. "We know you just spent a lot on that party, but we really need to borrow some money for an emergency. Can you spot us? 1850? I stared at the message for a full minute, convinced I was misreading it. They were asking me for the exact amount I had spent on the party they had deliberately skipped. This could not be a coincidence. My mother chimed in. That seems reasonable. Family should help family. The audacity was breathtaking. Less than 24 hours after collectively destroying my daughter's birthday, they were asking me to hand over the equivalent of what I had spent trying to celebrate her. The amount was too specific to be accidental. This was part of whatever sick game they were playing. I screenshot the entire conversation and then left the group chat without responding. If they wanted to play games, I could play games too. But first, I needed to understand what was really happening here. I called my Aunt Rebecca, my father's sister, who had always been the family truth teller. Rebecca lived 3 states away and had not been invited to the party due to distance, but she always had her finger on the pulse of family dynamics. Rebecca, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Shoot, honey. Did you know my family was planning to skip Melody's birthday party? The pause that followed told me everything I needed to know. Oh, Solara. I was hoping this would blow over before it got to this point. Before what got to this point? What are you talking about? Your mother called me 2 weeks ago upset about your party spending. She said the family had decided to stage some kind of intervention by not showing up. She wanted me to support the decision, but I told her it was cruel to punish a 7-year-old for her mother's choices. The confirmation hit like ice water in my veins. This had been premeditated. They had been planning this for weeks while I was excitedly sending updates about party preparations. There is more is not there, I asked, recognizing the hesitation in Rebecca's voice. Honey, I probably should not be telling you this, but your family has been talking about your finances for months. Your mother thinks you are irresponsible with money, and she convinced your siblings that enabling your spending is hurting you in the long run. So, they decided to teach me a lesson by breaking my daughter's heart. I tried to tell them this was the wrong approach, but you know how your mother gets when she thinks she is right about something. She can be very persuasive. After I hung up with Rebecca, I sat down and really thought about my family dynamics for the first time in years. My mother had always been controlling about money, but I had attributed that to growing up poor and wanting security. My siblings had always deferred to her judgment, even as adults. I had been the only one who ever pushed back against her need to control everyone's financial decisions. This was not really about the party at all. This was about my mother asserting dominance and my siblings falling in line. The birthday party had just been the excuse they needed to make their point. But asking me for $1,850 the day after their coordinated boycott, that was something else entirely. That was pure malice disguised as family need. I spent the afternoon doing research. I called the venues and vendors from the party and asked about their cancellation policies. Most had 24 to 48-hour windows where I could have gotten partial refunds if I had known to cancel. My family's silence had cost me hundreds of dollars that I could have saved with advance notice. Then I did something that felt both scary and liberating. I blocked all of their phone numbers and removed them from my social media accounts. If they wanted to communicate with me, they would have to put in actual effort instead of expecting immediate access to my time and emotional energy. By evening, I had formulated a plan. If my family wanted to play power games involving money and manipulation, I was going to show them exactly what that looked like when someone fought back with intelligence instead of emotion. I unblocked Marcus's number long enough to send a single text message. Happy to discuss your 1850 emergency. Let us meet at Mom's house tomorrow evening at 7. Bring everyone who skipped the party. I will explain my decision in person. His response came back within minutes. Great. We knew you would come through for family. The confidence in his message told me everything I needed to know about how this family operated. They expected me to roll over and comply because I always had before. They had no idea that yesterday had changed fundamental things about how I saw them and how I planned to interact with them going forward. I spent the rest of the evening researching something that had been nagging at me since Rebecca's call. If my family was so concerned about my financial responsibility, I wanted to understand their own money management before I made my next move. What I discovered was going to make tomorrow night's meeting very interesting indeed. The research I conducted that evening revealed information that transformed my understanding of my family's financial lectures completely. Social media posts, public records, and conversations with mutual friends painted a picture of hypocrisy so staggering that I had to double-check everything twice. My parents, who had been preaching financial responsibility, had just returned from a 2-week European vacation that they had been posting about extensively on Facebook. The photos showed expensive restaurants, luxury hotels, and shopping excursions that had to have cost several $1,000s. My mother was wearing a new designer purse in at least 6 different photos, and my father was posing with wine bottles that I recognized as costing over $100 each. Marcus, who needed to borrow $1,850 for an emergency, had posted Instagram stories from a casino just 2 days before Melody's party. The timestamps showed he had been gambling until 3 in the morning, and the background of his videos showed him placing bets that were easily $50 to $100 each hand. His emergency was probably debt from his own poor choices. Dahlia's social media revealed the most infuriating information of all. While I had been working double shifts to save for my daughter's party, my sister had been posting about her weekly spa treatments, expensive dinners out, and a brand new car lease that she was clearly excited about. The car payments alone probably exceeded my monthly rent. But the discovery that made my blood boil was finding out that all 3 of them had been together the day of Melody's party. Marcus had posted a group photo of the family at brunch timestamp, showing 11:30 in the morning. They had been laughing and enjoying themselves while my daughter was asking where her grandparents were. The brunch location was at an upscale restaurant about 20 minutes from my house. They could have easily made it to the party if they had wanted to. Instead, they had chosen to flaunt their absence by documenting their alternative family gathering without us. Armed with this information, I reached out to Rebecca again and asked her to dig deeper into what exactly my family had been saying about me behind my back. What she told me was worse than I had imagined. Your mother has been telling people that you are financially unstable and that your spending on Melody is compensating for being a single mother, Rebecca explained reluctantly. She has been saying that the family needs to stop enabling your behavior before you end up homeless. What behavior? Working 2 jobs and saving for months to give my daughter a nice birthday. I know it does not make sense, honey, but your mother has convinced herself that you are spiraling, and she has gotten Marcus and Dahlia to believe it too. She keeps saying that tough love is the only thing that will save you. The picture was becoming clearer. My mother had decided that my independence and financial choices threatened her authority, so she had launched a campaign to undermine my credibility within the family. The birthday party boycott was not about money at all. It was about control and punishment for not following her directives about how I should live my life. I spent Tuesday preparing for the evening confrontation, but I also did something unexpected. I called Melody's school and asked to speak with the counselor about how to explain family conflict to a 7-year-old. The conversation was enlightening in ways I had not anticipated. Children her age understand fairness very clearly, the counselor explained. If family members promised to attend an important event and then did not show up without explanation, she likely feels confused and may blame herself. The best thing you can do is reassure her that adult conflicts are not her fault, and that people who love her will show up when it matters. That afternoon, I had a gentle conversation with Melody about what had happened at her party. I explained that sometimes adults make poor choices and that it was not her fault that some family members had not come to celebrate with her. Did I do something wrong, Mommy? She asked, and the question broke my heart. No, baby. You did absolutely nothing wrong. Some people forgot what it means to keep their promises, but that is their problem to fix, not yours. Will they come to my next birthday? I do not know, sweetheart, but I promise that your next birthday will be filled with people who love you and want to celebrate how amazing you are. That evening, I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 7 o'clock. Everyone was already there, sitting around the dining room table like they were about to conduct a board meeting. The setup felt deliberately intimidating, which told me they had planned this approach. Before we discuss your financial emergency, I said, taking a seat across from them, I want to clarify a few things about what happened at Melody's party. Solara, we already explained our position, my mother interrupted. We are not going to enable irresponsible spending. I understand your position. What I want to understand is why you felt it was appropriate to coordinate a family boycott without telling me in advance, then ask me for the exact amount I spent on the party the very next day. The silence that followed was telling. Marcus and Dahlia exchanged glances, and my father looked uncomfortable. We did not coordinate anything, Marcus said, but his tone lacked conviction. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screenshot of Rebecca's text messages confirming their premeditation. Rebecca told me about Mom's phone call 2 weeks ago. You all knew you were not coming to the party, but you let me spend money I could not afford and build up my daughter's hopes anyway. That is not how it happened, my mother said, but her voice was defensive. Then explain how it did happen. Explain how all 4 of you independently decided to skip the same party, turn off your phones, and then ask me for $18.50 the next day. I pulled out printed copies of their social media posts and placed them on the table. Also explain how people who are worried about my financial responsibility can afford European vacations, casino trips, spa treatments, and new cars, but cannot afford to contribute anything to their granddaughter's birthday celebration. The evidence spread across the table created an uncomfortable silence. Nobody had expected me to come prepared with receipts. Those are private expenses, Dahlia said weakly. Exactly, just like my daughter's birthday party was my private expense. But only one of us used their private expenses as an excuse to hurt a 7-year-old child. My father cleared his throat. Maybe we could have handled the communication better. Could have handled it better, Dad. You let my daughter spend her entire birthday waiting for family members who never intended to show up. There is no version of that which is acceptable. I stood up and gathered the photos back into my folder. Now about your $18.50 emergency. I have decided that I am not going to enable irresponsible financial behavior. If you need money, you should probably consider cutting back on luxury expenses and learning to live within your means. The shocked expressions around the table were almost worth the entire ordeal. But we are family, Marcus protested. Family members show up for 7-year-old birthday parties. Family members do not coordinate boycotts designed to humiliate and hurt each other. Family members do not lie about emergencies to extract money they think they are entitled to. You cannot be serious, my mother said. I am completely serious. You wanted to teach me a lesson about financial responsibility. Consider this lesson reciprocated. I walked toward the door, then turned back. One more thing. Until you can explain to Melody why her family was too busy to celebrate her birthday, but not too busy to ask her mother for money the next day, we will not be participating in family gatherings. When you are ready to apologize to her directly and make this right, you know where to find us. The arguing started before I reached my car, but I drove away feeling lighter than I had felt in months. For the first time in years, I had stood up to my family's manipulation instead of absorbing it. I had no idea that my small act of rebellion was about to expose something much bigger than birthday party politics. The fallout from my refusal began within hours of leaving my parents' house. By 9 that evening, my phone was buzzing with angry text messages from extended family members who had been recruited into the drama. Apparently, my mother had immediately launched a campaign to paint me as the villain who was tearing the family apart over money. The messages were remarkably similar in tone and content, which told me they had been coordinated. Cousins I rarely spoke to were suddenly very concerned about my mental health and financial stability. Family friends were reaching out to express disappointment in my selfishness. The narrative being pushed was that I was having some kind of breakdown and punishing my loving family for trying to help me. But Wednesday morning brought a phone call that changed everything. Rebecca called me at 6 a.m, her voice shaking with anger. "Solara, I need to tell you something, and you need to sit down for this." "What happened?" "I could not sleep after our conversation yesterday, so I did some digging into your family's finances. I have friends who work in banking, and I asked them to look into some things. What I found out is going to make you sick." "Tell me." "Your parents have been stealing from your grandmother's estate for 2 years. The money they have been spending on vacations and luxury items, it belongs to your grandmother's trust fund that was supposed to be distributed equally among her grandchildren when she passed." The words hit me like a physical blow. My grandmother had died 3 years ago, leaving a substantial inheritance that was supposed to be managed by my parents as trustees until it could be distributed to me, Marcus and Dahlia, when we each turned 30. "Are you certain about this?" "I have bank statements, honey. They have been pulling money out of the trust regularly and using it for personal expenses. Your European vacation, Marcus's gambling debts, Dahlia's new car, all of it was paid for with your inheritance money." "How much are we talking about?" "At least $60,000 over the past 2 years. Maybe more. The trust was originally worth about $200,000, and there is barely half of that left." I felt the room spinning around me. Not only had my family orchestrated cruelty toward my daughter, but they had been systematically stealing from all of us while lecturing me about financial responsibility. "There is more," Rebecca continued. "The emergency Marcus mentioned, he owes $25,000 in gambling debt to some very dangerous people. Your parents have been bailing him out with trust money, but they are running out. They needed your $1,850 as a down payment to keep his creditors at bay for another month." The complete picture crystallized with horrifying clarity. My family had not just skipped my daughter's party out of spite. They had needed me to feel desperate and isolated so I would hand over money without asking questions. The birthday boycott was designed to put me in an emotional state where I would give them anything they asked for. "Rebecca, I need copies of everything you found." "I already scanned it all. Check your email in 10 minutes. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the wall, processing the magnitude of their betrayal. They had stolen my inheritance, manipulated my emotions, broken my daughter's heart, and then attempted to extort more money from me to cover their crimes. The $1,850 they wanted was probably just the beginning of what they planned to take. My phone started ringing again. This time it was my mother, and I decided to answer. "Solara, we need to talk about yesterday. You were very disrespectful, and your father and I think you owe the family an apology." "An apology for what exactly?" "For embarrassing us in front of everyone and refusing to help your brother when he needed support." "Mom, I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. I know about grandmother's trust fund. I know you and Dad have been stealing from it for 2 years. I know Marcus's emergency is gambling debt that you have been paying with my inheritance money." The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. "I do not know what you think you know, but I have bank statements, transaction records, and documentation of every withdrawal you have made from the trust. I also have evidence that you coordinated the birthday party boycott to manipulate me into giving you money without asking questions. You do not understand how complicated—" "I understand perfectly. You stole from your own children and then traumatized your granddaughter to cover it up. What I want to know is whether you are going to return the money voluntarily or whether I need to involve lawyers and law enforcement." My mother's voice turned cold and calculated. "You cannot prove anything, and even if you could, No one would believe you over us. We are respected members of this community, and you are a struggling single mother with obvious emotional problems. We will see about that. I hung up and immediately called a lawyer who specialized in estate fraud. The consultation confirmed what I already suspected. My parents had committed multiple felonies, and the evidence Rebecca had provided was more than enough to pursue both criminal charges and civil recovery. But before I involved the legal system, I decided to give my family one final opportunity to do the right thing. I drafted a detailed email outlining everything I knew about their theft and manipulation, along with copies of all the evidence. I sent it to my parents and siblings with a simple ultimatum. They had 72 hours to return the stolen money to the trust fund and provide written apologies to Melody for missing her birthday party. If they failed to comply, I would be filing criminal charges and pursuing civil litigation for the full amount of the theft, plus damages. I also copied every extended family member who had been sending me guilt trip messages about my behavior. If my family wanted to involve the entire community in this drama, then the community deserved to know the truth about who was really destroying family bonds. The response was swift and predictable. Within an hour, my phone was ringing with calls from family members who had been completely unaware of the financial fraud. The tide of public opinion shifted dramatically once people understood that the conflict was not about birthday party spending, but about systematic theft and emotional manipulation. My parents tried to control the narrative by claiming the documents were fabricated, but too many people had access to independent verification for their denials to hold weight. Marcus attempted to minimize his gambling problem, but his social media posts provided a clear timeline of his escalating behavior. By Friday afternoon, it was clear that my family had no intention of returning the money voluntarily. They had instead doubled down on their victim narrative and were telling anyone who would listen that I was having a mental breakdown and trying to destroy them with false accusations. That evening, I filed a police report for theft and fraud. The officer who took my statement was professional and thorough, explaining that financial crimes against family members were taken very seriously, and that the evidence I provided was compelling. "What happens next?" I asked. "We will investigate, but based on what you have shown me, I expect charges will be filed within a few weeks. You should also consider pursuing this through civil court to recover your losses." As I drove home that night, I felt something I had not experienced in years: the satisfaction of standing up for myself and my daughter against people who had counted on my compliance and silence. The police investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Within a week of filing my report, detectives had obtained warrants for my parents' financial records and discovered even more extensive fraud than we had originally documented. The trust fund theft was just the tip of the iceberg. My parents had been running a systematic scheme for years, using their positions as trustees and financial advisors in the community to steal from multiple estates and investment accounts. The investigation revealed that they had taken nearly $500,000 from various sources, including church funds, elderly neighbors who had trusted them with financial management, and several other family trust accounts. The news hit our small community like a bomb. My parents had built their reputation on being trustworthy financial advisors and pillars of moral authority. Local newspapers picked up the story, and suddenly everyone in town knew that the people who had been lecturing others about fiscal responsibility were professional thieves. Marcus was arrested on a Tuesday morning at his workplace. The gambling debts were worse than anyone realized, and he had been using his position at a local accounting firm to embezzle client funds to pay his creditors. His arrest was particularly humiliating because it happened in front of his coworkers and several clients who had trusted him with their business finances. Dahlia tried to distance herself from the family scandal by claiming she had been unaware of any wrongdoing, but the investigation revealed that she had been actively helping to hide stolen money by allowing them to make purchases under her name. Her new car spa treatments and luxury lifestyle had all been funded with money that belonged to other people. The morning my parents were arrested, I received a phone call from my mother that I will never forget. "This is all your fault," she screamed into the phone. "We were handling everything fine until you had to make a scene over a stupid birthday party. You were not handling anything. You were stealing from your own family and dozens of other people. We were borrowing money temporarily until we could pay it back. Nobody was supposed to get hurt. You hurt my daughter. You hurt me. You hurt everyone you stole from. And you hurt yourselves by choosing crime over honest communication. We did this for the family. Marcus was in trouble and we were trying to protect him. You did this for yourselves. If you wanted to help Marcus, you could have used your own money or encouraged him to get help for his gambling addiction. Instead, you chose to steal from everyone around you. The police said we could go to prison for 20 years. 20 years, Solara? Are you happy now?" I am not happy that it came to this, but I am grateful that the truth is finally out and that no one else can be hurt by your choices. The phone calls from extended family members took on a very different tone after the arrests. Instead of lecturing me about forgiveness and family loyalty, people were apologizing for doubting my version of events and expressing shock at the scope of my parents' crimes. My cousin Jennifer, who had sent me multiple angry messages about tearing the family apart, called to offer her support. "I owe you a huge apology. I had no idea what they were really doing. When your mom called crying about how you were being unreasonable, I just believed her because she is family." I understand. They were very convincing liars for a very long time. How are you handling all of this? It must be overwhelming to discover that people you trusted were stealing from you. Honestly, I feel relieved more than anything. For years, I thought there was something wrong with me because I could never live up to their expectations. Now I understand that their expectations were designed to keep me feeling inferior, so I would not ask too many questions. The community response was overwhelming. People started reaching out to share their own experiences with my parents' manipulation and control. Apparently, their behavior toward me was part of a much larger pattern of emotional and financial abuse that had affected dozens of families over the years. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly neighbor who had trusted my parents to manage her late husband's pension, called to thank me for exposing their crimes. I knew something was wrong when my monthly payments kept getting smaller, but they always had explanations that sounded reasonable. I thought maybe I was just confused because of my age. "How much did they take from you?" "Nearly $30,000 over 3 years. The police said I might be able to recover some of it, but even if I do not get the money back, I am grateful to know I was not losing my mind." The financial recovery process was complex and lengthy, but within 2 months, the court had frozen all of my parents' assets and begun the process of returning stolen funds to victims. My portion of grandmother's trust fund was restored, plus interest and damages. More importantly, the criminal charges meant that my parents and Marcus would face serious prison time. Their plea bargains involved full restitution to victims and lengthy sentences that reflected the scope of their crimes. Dahlia avoided prison by cooperating fully with the investigation and agreeing to pay back everything she had received from the stolen funds. She lost her car, her apartment, and most of her possessions, but she avoided felony charges by demonstrating that she had been manipulated rather than being an active participant in the scheme. The most surprising development came when Dahlia called me 3 weeks after the arrests. "Solara, I need to apologize to you and Melody. I was wrong about everything." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I let Mom convince me that you were the problem when the real problem was us. We were all so afraid of disappointing her that we went along with things we knew were wrong, including skipping Melody's party. Especially that. I knew it was cruel, but Mom said it was necessary tough love. I was too much of a coward to stand up to her." Dahlia, I appreciate the apology, but the damage to Melody goes beyond just missing her party. She spent months excited about her family being there, and then she spent her birthday wondering why we did not love her enough to show up. I know, and I want to make it right, if you will let me try. The conversation was difficult, but it opened the door to a relationship with my sister that was based on honesty rather than our mother's manipulation. Dahlia had been as much a victim of our parents' control as I had been, just in different ways. Looking back, the birthday party boycott was the best thing that ever happened to our family. It forced the truth into the open and freed all of us from years of manipulation and lies. 6 months after Melody's birthday party, that changed everything. We celebrated her 8th birthday, surrounded by people who genuinely loved and supported us. The guest list looked very different from what I had once considered family, but the warmth and joy in our backyard far exceeded anything we had experienced with my biological relatives. Rebecca flew in from 3 states away and became the honorary grandmother Melody deserved. My co-workers from both jobs who had heard pieces of the story over months of court proceedings insisted on contributing to the party planning and turned it into the most elaborate celebration our neighborhood had ever seen. Melody's teacher and several classmates' parents had become genuine friends who showed up not out of obligation, but out of love. Most surprisingly, Dahlia was there. She had spent the past 6 months in therapy, working through years of our mother's psychological manipulation, and she was slowly building a relationship with Melody based on honesty and respect. She arrived with a thoughtful gift and helped with setup, but more importantly, she looked Melody in the eye and apologized for missing her 7th birthday. I made a very bad choice last year, and I hurt your feelings. That was wrong, and I am sorry. It is okay, Aunt Dahlia. Mommy explained that sometimes adults make mistakes. That is true, but some mistakes are bigger than others. I promise I will never miss another one of your birthdays. The legal proceedings had concluded with sentences that reflected the serious nature of my parents' crimes. My father received 12 years in federal prison for his role as the primary architect of the fraud scheme. My mother got 8 years for her cooperation in early plea negotiations. Marcus was sentenced to 6 years and mandatory addiction treatment for his gambling problem. The financial recovery had been more successful than anyone expected. The court-appointed trustee managed to recover nearly 80% of the stolen funds, and my portion of grandmother's inheritance had been fully restored, with additional damages for emotional distress. For the first time in my adult life, I had genuine financial security. But the real victory was psychological. The constant anxiety I had carried for years about not meeting my family's expectations had disappeared completely once I understood that their expectations were designed to be impossible to meet. The criticism and lectures about my life choices had never been about helping me improve. They had been about maintaining control and hiding their own criminal behavior. Melody was thriving in ways that surprised everyone, including her school counselor. Instead of being traumatized by the family drama, she had absorbed the lesson that people who truly care about you show up when it matters. She had developed a confidence and clarity about relationships that impressed adults who interacted with her. Mommy, I am glad Grandma and Grandpa are not coming to my birthday anymore, she told me while we were decorating for her 8th birthday party. Why is that, baby? Because now I know that everyone who comes really wants to be here. Before, I was always worried that people were just pretending to like me. Her wisdom at 8 years old exceeded what I had managed to learn in 28 years of life. The community response to our story had been overwhelmingly positive. Several other families had come forward with their own experiences of financial abuse by trusted relatives, and my willingness to pursue legal action had encouraged others to seek justice for their own situations. The local domestic violence organization asked me to speak at their annual fundraiser about financial abuse and family manipulation. Many people think abuse is only physical, I told the audience, but financial abuse and emotional manipulation can be just as devastating and often go unrecognized for years. The people who hurt us most are often the ones who claim to love us most. The most unexpected blessing is the relationship I developed with Mrs. Patterson, the elderly neighbor whose pension my parents had stolen. She had become like a grandmother to Melody, and in return, we helped her with grocery shopping and yard work. She brought a wisdom and perspective to our lives that enriched both of us. "Your parents thought they were teaching you a lesson about money," she told me one afternoon while we watched Melody play in her garden. "But the lesson you learned was much more valuable. You learned that you do not have to accept mistreatment from people just because they are related to you." The speaking engagements and victim advocacy work had opened doors I never expected. A nonprofit organization focused on estate fraud prevention offered me a full-time position helping other families navigate similar situations. The work was meaningful and paid better than both of my previous jobs combined, which meant I could spend more time with Melody while still providing financial stability. Looking back, I could see that the birthday party boycott had been a blessing disguised as betrayal. If my family had shown up that day, I might have continued enabling their manipulation for years while they continued stealing from vulnerable people in our community. Melody might have grown up thinking that love requires accepting disrespect and broken promises. Instead, she was learning that healthy relationships involve mutual respect, honest communication, and people who follow through on their commitments. She was building friendships based on genuine connection rather than family obligation, and she was developing the confidence to set boundaries with people who did not treat her well. The final piece of closure came when I received a letter from my mother in prison. I debated whether to read it, but curiosity won. "I want you to know that I never intended for things to go this far. We were just trying to teach you responsibility, and everything got out of hand. I hope someday you can forgive us, and we can be a family again." The letter contained no acknowledgement of the theft, no apology for the emotional damage to Melody, and no recognition of the harm caused to other victims. It was one final attempt at manipulation, trying to rewrite history and avoid accountability. I showed the letter to my therapist, who helped me recognize it as a perfect example of why maintaining no contact was the healthiest choice for both Melody and me. "Some people are not capable of genuine change or accountability," she explained. "Your job is not to fix them or manage their emotions. Your job is to protect yourself and your daughter from further harm." As I finished writing this story, Melody was planning her 9th birthday party with the enthusiasm and confidence of a child who knows she is loved unconditionally. The guest list includes chosen family members who have proven their love through actions rather than words, friends who celebrate her achievements without expecting anything in return, and adults who respect her boundaries and feelings. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting yourself or your children from harm? I want to hear your stories in the comments below, because I have learned that we are not alone in these struggles. Sometimes the family that loves us best is not the one we were born into, but the one we choose to build through our values and boundaries. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve relationships built on respect and genuine love, not obligation and manipulation. Thank you for listening to my family's journey from betrayal to healing. Remember that choosing your own well-being is not selfish. It is necessary. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give the people you love is showing them what healthy boundaries look like in action.